All right, this is episode 4 of Farm to Markets, where we talk about everything from farms to stock markets. This week, we're talking about lumber prices, Monday's stock sell-off, and for the first time, we're actually going to talk about a farm-related issue, which is, should you have a rooster in the hen house? Drew, lumber prices hit a record high on May 7th, but have dropped about 50% since then. First, what's going on? And second, is now the time to buy a house?
So unless you don't get out very much, I think we all know that lumber prices have skyrocketed over the last few months. And that's mainly a result of a few things, but it simply comes down to basic supply and demand. First of all, we remember the pandemic crushed the economy last spring, and that caused a bunch of sawmills to shut down, which decreased the supply of lumber. Second, people were stuck at home. Remember quarantine. They were doing more home remodeling projects. Also, they were just getting out of the city living, getting out of the apartments and building new homes elsewhere. And then third, interest rates dropped to record lows, and that allowed a larger pool of people to afford mortgages. So you have this large demand for building home, and you have a very low supply of lumber able to build those homes. So naturally, the price is going to increase. So that's what's been going on. Prices have been coming down, and I think that's because manufacturing's picking back up, and demand, I think, will start leveling off pretty soon. So I think that means that prices should start coming down in the next few months. Now, should you buy a home? I don't think you should let the market force you into a home or out of a home just because of what it's doing. I think you should just follow the rules and make sure that a home is right for you, regardless of what the markets do.
Alex, what do you think?
Well, I do think lumber prices are going to come down this year, but they have been trending up in recent years. I looked up the year-over-year data. So for 2016, they were up 27%. In 17, they were up 35%. 18, they were down 24. 19, the year before the pandemic, they were up 25%. 2020 sent them up year over year, 77% for the lumber futures average settled price. Year over year, right now, they're only down 28%. So if you're hoping to come back to pre-pandemic prices, you've got a way to go. I kind of want to echo what Drew says. If you need a home, you need a home. Just make sure it's a home you can afford. Don't make yourself house poor by buying something you can't afford. If you're looking to build, you can try waiting it out, but you're going to need some steep declines for the next couple of years just to get back to pre-pandemic prices, which were already up from the few years before that. So really it just depends what you can afford and what you're willing to pay.
Joe?
Well, I think that to what Drew said is that it's a basic supply and demand issue. Is that during the pandemic, a lot of sawmills were required to let workers take a furlough, and it's really easy to terminate skilled workers, but it's really hard to bring all those skilled workers back to work because they've often found jobs someplace else. So when you had 3 shifts working 24 hours a day, kicking out lumber, and then you go to one shift or possibly a part-time shift, and then you try to ramp back up to meet the demand, it's very difficult to do. I believe that's what's actually happening, is that they're back up to full capacity again. Production is now moving a lot of lumber out into the economy. And what will end up happening is that there will be a glut of wood that will surpass the demand. At that point, I think there'll be a slight decline greater than what it is right now. But lumber prices will continue to trend upwards, primarily just because the cost of cutting timber is getting higher and higher. Talk to the logger guys. It's always getting difficult to find lumber sales because of all of the environmentalists who are shutting down logging. But if now is a good time to buy a house, the 2 gentlemen earlier stated what I concur with is that buy a house when you need a house and buy it following the rules.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
We've been focusing on the lumber prices, but I think you also have to factor in the labor costs, and those certainly aren't exempt from the laws of supply and demand either. So even if you see an increase in the supply of lumber in the marketplace, doesn't necessarily mean that contractors or construction workers are going to charge any less for their labor, as long as people are willing to pursue homes.
No, you're absolutely right. But in 2020, you're absolutely right. Is that the issue is it's not so much that there aren't any trees to harvest. There's more than enough trees out there. It's where the bottleneck is at the sawmills, that they can't process the wood fast enough. In fact, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal a few months ago about how tree growers are not making any money right now, and all the money's being made at the sawmills. In 2020, they were able to increase their production capacity by about 1.4 billion board feet. And then by the end of this year, they're expected to have they're expected to increase it by another 1.6 billion board feet. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And then as they're able to produce more wood faster, that wood's going to hit the market. It's going to drive prices down. If you're trying to time the market as far as building a house goes, it's going to be real hard, because you can start to see when the lumber hits the market, but you have to wait for wood suppliers to burn through all their high cost inventory. But then there's a bunch of there's people waiting out there who are going to wait to build a house they're going to wait till prices come down to build their house. So there's going to be this weird kind of push and pull of supply and demand until we get all this pent up demand out of the market. And that's probably when you start to see wood prices stabilize. So it's going to be real hard to try and time the market. If you're trying to build a house, it's going to be real hard to try and time the market. So move on.
With that said, though, Tom, is that I'm in the market for a tool shop. I'll probably wait till the fall to buy my lumber.
Okay. Well,
but I think what Tom's saying is if everyone waiting to build their tool shed till the price drops all of a sudden goes and builds a woodshed, it might cause another spike until the
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How many other people are waiting to build their tool shop in the fall? All right. Next is that along with the drop in lumber prices, the stock market had a rough couple of days that ended Monday when it ended down about 3% from its high. Alex, do you want to give us your thoughts on what's going on?
Well, I think some of the biggest headlines are going to be oil and gas prices are coming down as the OPEC agreement looks like they're going to increase supply, which is obviously going to drive prices down. There is increasing fear that governments are going to go back into lockdown or increase restrictions due to the Delta variant of COVID. How vigorous those policies are going to be this time around, no one's really sure. There's also still inflation fear. With all the money printing going on, or that's been going on, a lot of people are still concerned that inflation is going to eat into wages, profits, you name it. There's also a question mark about the new stimulus bill, whether or not we're going to get one. They want to do a $3.5 trillion stimulus and infrastructure. This is going to include a lot of Green New Deal stuff, infrastructure spending. Discussion on whether or not it'll actually get 60 votes, or they're going to have to go the reconciliation route. I think right now they're trading on those headlines, and right now there will continue to be headline trading. We'll see what happens in the near future with stocks. So I think in general stocks are going to go up, but.
Okay. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just another day at Cocoa Enterprises. I mean, this kind of volatility, though rare, is not out of the realm of reality for us. The market was down, almost 800 points yesterday, but it was up 550 today. It's just that as the numbers get bigger, the numbers of increases and declines are also going to increase over time as well. I think that one of the benefits of us is that when we invest, we can invest strategically for the long term, where a lot of these institutional investors, they have to beat each other. For them, it's a zero-sum game. It's not enough to stay ahead of inflation and taxes. They have to beat the other institutional investment firm who's vying for that North Carolina, employee retirement plan. And if they lose by 1/4%, then the other guys are coming behind them and trying to steal their business from them. And so these institutional investors, they're like fishing on a cruise ship. Everybody's catching fish on one side, and then everybody goes over that side, and the next day somebody catches a fish on the other side of the ship. Everybody goes over there, and it drives the markets in these insane directions. As far as I'm concerned, I heard on the news, got to the office, and just put my game face on and went to work. It didn't really affect me one way or the other, and I hope it doesn't for our clients.
Drew?
Nothing too notable in the markets. The markets are just being the markets. They've trended steadily upward pretty much without any major interruption over the last month. But since we're talking about it, it's because over the last 5 trading days, we have seen a pretty rough slump. I think there was market declines 4 or 5 days in a row. And as of today, this is the first relief that we've gotten. I think it's mostly due to the Delta COVID-19 variant. I think investors' spidey senses are tingling, so to speak, and they've seen this before, and they see what lockdowns can do to the economy. So once there's a whiff of that, they pull out, markets go down, and then once they're down, they want to rush back in, just like my dad's tool shed scenario. So you get a slump, and then stocks are valuable again, and then they pour it back in, and that's just business as usual.
Sounds good. And I don't have much to add to this conversation. You guys basically said it. The only thing I'll add is that, 10 years ago, I don't think we saw the speed of sell-offs like we do today. Like a 3% drop in the market happens pretty fast. The good news is that it happens the other way too. So the rebound, again, today it's up about 2%. The swings that we're seeing are a lot bigger than they were 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's somewhat frightening, but yeah, I absolutely agree. There's nothing material about this. It's just another day in the market.
It is. Can I add one more thing that I found interesting? It's the sector rotation, which is basically different sectors of the economy are in favor over others at any given time. Once the Delta COVID-19 variant started hitting the news, growth stocks growth stocks primarily in tech started to see a resurgence there. So that was kind of interesting to watch.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll move on to our last topic, which will be the first time we're actually going to talk about a farm-related topic, and it's a pretty controversial one. Joe, over the last several years, raising backyard chickens is becoming increasingly popular as people want to become more self-sufficient. Obviously, hens are needed to produce eggs. However, there's debate about whether a rooster is needed in the hen house. Your thoughts?
Well, there's probably few things more contentious in the homesteading community than whether you should have a rooster or not. Right now, the Coco family, we tend to fall in on the side of roosters make a lot of sense. But in defense of the other crowd, we actually have a pretty nice rooster. The main reason why people don't like having roosters is that they're mean. They attack small children, they attack the owners and that sort of thing. And there's been more than one rooster who's ended up in the gumbo pot because he attacked the lady of the family. Our particular rooster does a wonderful job as a bodyguard for the hens. And last year at this time, before we had a rooster, we lost 4 chickens to foxes and neighbor dogs. And this year we've only lost 1 to the neighbor dog. So I think having a rooster has its benefits, and we're pro rooster in our house.
And as for me, I own 5 chickens and a pretty nice chicken coop. I didn't build it, but when I got there, this thing is like the Taj Mahal of chicken coops. Like I said, I have 5 chickens, and there's 4 egg laying stalls. As long as a pretty substantial run for the chickens. And you can also inside the chicken coop, there's a door into the actual coop, and then they walk out into like a fenced in run. So for me, there's absolutely no reason to have a rooster. I live close to my neighbors, and any noise that the rooster would make, I'd probably be getting complaints and people knocking on my door. There's a rooster that lives about a 1/4 mile down the hill from me, and I hear it every morning like it's in my own backyard. So for people surrounded in residential areas, obviously cities don't really like, you can only have so many chickens inside city limits, and I don't think they're big fans of roosters. But for where I live, we are a no rooster family. Because my small kids, if they ever got attacked by the Roosters, I'd have to send them to counseling.
The
Ellis, you
rooster
got any thoughts on
or
this?
the kids?
Both.
Well, I don't own chickens. I don't have a coop. More rurally, like where Joe is, it seems to make a lot of sense, especially if you have predators, or if you want to have the option to produce your own chicks, sell chicks. In urban environments, they're just going to be big noisemakers. And so if you want your neighbors to plot ways to shoot you or your rooster, I'd suggest getting one. Otherwise, avoid it. I think a lot of neighbors would treat it like a dog that just barks constantly. If you like getting up at whatever time the rooster decides to get up, go ahead and get one. If not, avoid it.
Drew?
Well, I've lost many friends and had to change churches because of my opinions on this. But I'm pro rooster as well. The rooster, I live next to my dad, and rooster is very nice. I have an 18-month-old daughter who likes to call them dodos from the noise they make. So I get a lot of enjoyment out of the rooster, and so does she. So I'm for the rooster.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this one.
That's a wrap.